episode number 44 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. My guest today is Monica Cox. Monica refers to herself as a hippie and is obsessed with real food. Her clean eating lifestyle evolved slowly during her 9-year fertility journey. She spent 6 years searching for an answer to her unexplained infertility, which included never seeing a positive pregnancy test and 2 failed IVFs. She decided to make some dramatic diet and lifestyle changes to improve her fertility health and requested immune tests even though the doctors told her she wasn't a candidate for such testing. The results came back and she discovered she had high natural killer cells, the answer to her unexplained infertility. With 5 embryos on ice, she did 3 FETs with immune-suppressing drugs, which resulted in 2 miscarriages and 1 beautiful baby boy. 2 months after all the medical treatment was done, she found out the dramatic diet and lifestyle changes had paid off, and she was pregnant naturally for the first time ever. Baby boy number 2 entered their family in March of 2018. Monica is a stay-at-home mom, wife, fertility health coach, author of Baby and Me, and podcast host of The Infertile Diagnosis. She is all about inspiring others to improve their physical and mental health. So welcome to the podcast, Monica.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I was on your podcast just recently. Well, we did the interview and I just want to go ahead and mention that. What's your podcast name so that everybody can hear?
Oh, so we're at the Infertile Diagnosis, and it's all really about becoming your own hero and not getting hung up on the diagnosis that you're given.
Awesome. So I want to now go back and talk about how your work as a fertility coach was inspired by your own very personal story. And I wanted to have you share with the listeners how you got to this point and what led you to your calling.
So my journey is really long, and I'm going to give everyone the cliff notes because we'll be here forever if I don't. I started trying to get pregnant when I was 27. I had no symptoms that I wasn't going to get pregnant naturally or easily, and jumped forward 3 years after pretty much every test underneath the sun at a conventional doctor. We were sent to do IVF. We had unexplained infertility, and no one could really give us an answer to why we weren't getting pregnant. We were living in the United Kingdom at the time, so we didn't get funding through the NHS. We had to pay for it ourselves, but we did go through the NHS, and it was just a really kind of horrible experience, to be honest. We just listened to what the doctor said. We went in, they retrieved 13 eggs, I think about 5 or 6 fertilized, and they were all pretty horrible quality. They put 2 back in, and I didn't get pregnant off of that round. And they were just kind of left to believe that I had, poor eggs because my husband's sperm was fine, and that there was nothing that we can do about it. And we'll just try another round of IVF and see where we go from there. And we were kind of we were super naive and not really smart about anything, I don't think. But we kind of just looked at them and went, well, you're not even going to try new drugs or different drugs? And they're like, nope. And we're like, well, that's just not good enough. So we took a step back, and we were actually sat in Hyde Park with a good friend, and he just said, why don't you guys change up your diet? And we just looked at him, we're like, we're not unhealthy. And he's like, well, you're not getting pregnant and you have crappy embryos, so maybe you are unhealthy, in the nicest way possible.
Well, that was blunt.
So yeah, so we were like, okay, let's figure this out. And we went to see, or I went to see a functional medicine practitioner. And he kind of just got me on the lines of like, okay, let's look at what you're eating and then let's change some things up. And
Mhm.
so we went through that kind of, or like that process. And, I did find that my normal everyday diet that was not necessarily unhealthy, it definitely wasn't doing my body any good. We did that for about a year, and we found a new clinic and
Mhm.
had read a book. Kind of questioning like, is your body baby friendly, and about immune issues. And I was like, okay, there is something with this. So we went and found a clinic that did that testing. And in our first consultation, we got talked out of doing that testing because I wasn't having reoccurring miscarriages. So
Mhm.
we did another round of IVF, and it was much more successful. We got, I think, about 12 eggs that time, and five of them were beautiful looking. So that was a really big
Mm.
for us. And, but unfortunately, I didn't even make it to day 28 before I got my period.
Mhm.
And I was just devastated because I had put almost a
Yeah.
year into really changing my diet and my lifestyle. And yeah, like I couldn't even make it to day 28 with even all the, hormones that you're on. So we demanded the immune testing then, because I was like, right, there has to be something more. And we found out that I had high natural killer cells.
Right.
And so, because I had changed my diet already and I had been studying, all the kind of ins and outs of that, I started doing more research into autoimmune issues and the underlying causes. And so we went back and we did a frozen embryo transfer with immune suppressing drugs. And I got pregnant for the first time ever, which was
Mm.
amazing. I think by that stage it was almost 6 years of trying to conceive. And but unfortunately I had a missed miscarriage. So when we went to our 7 week scan, there was no heartbeat. We
Oh.
were really sad. I mean, I don't want to use the word devastated because we weren't. We, in a really weird way, we were given hope back that I even got pregnant and that my body could get pregnant. Um,
Mhm.
so we kind of just took some step back, and I went on an autoimmune paleo diet and really focused on, my mindset. And I think about 8 months later, we went and did another frozen embryo transfer, and we had a beautiful baby boy from that.
Oh.
Yeah, so that was like, we did it. We found the recipe. So we did use immune suppressing drugs, and I was on the autoimmune paleo diet. So a year and a bit later, we went to do our frozen embryo transfer. We had two embryos left, so we put them both back in, and we were going to have twins because we had the formula, right? We were going to use immune suppressing
Mhm.
drugs. I was on the diet. I was healthy, and unfortunately, I had a early carriage with those, um, which we
Mhm.
got really blindsided by that one because we were just so overconfident, which I don't think is a bad thing. But, we just were kind of left like, well, why didn't that work? We did everything right. And in hindsight, the embryos just weren't good enough. We didn't do any of the genetic testing with the embryos, so we didn't know for sure. No one can just look at an embryo and say it's a good or a bad embryo.
Right.
The doctors are just making the best guess. And so that was that. We were done with any kind of medical assistance. We had already decided that, and we just felt super blessed. We had a little baby boy, and we were just gonna move on with life. We were looking at renting a chalet. My husband was just about to retire from the Royal Air Force, so we had about 6 months before he was gonna start a new job. So we were gonna go snowboarding and just live life, and that was gonna be that. And 2 months later, I found out I was pregnant naturally.
Amazing. I love the story. I got the chills. It's just incredible.
So yeah, it's a really long journey, and I feel it was so long for a lot of reasons. The first few years, we weren't doing anything to necessarily improve my situation, even though I was doing acupuncture, I was doing reflexology, I was, doing kind of like the vitamins, all the things that are really accessible on the internet and have been proven to help with fertility. They just weren't helping me. I had such a deep underlying issue that I had to like
Mhm.
really dig through the trenches. And I think that all the immune stuff now is much more accessible. And even though I know there's like a lot of doctors who still don't believe in it necessarily, um, yeah, there's a lot more information out there. So, I'm hoping that women who have issues like I did aren't going to have to go through such a long journey.
Yeah, and what I love about your story is that it almost saved your life. Your fertility journey, it shone a light on what was going on in your body, and you kind of tuned into that and researched and figured out ways, which I'm huge on food, especially for autoimmune conditions. Food has been shown, just diet changes have been shown to be incredible, and the body's very forgiving once you figure out what you need to do. But I love the fact that this guided you to a better state of health. And then once you've achieved that, everything fell into place.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it sucks when you're going through the journey and some, people tell you, well, everything is meant for a reason or all that BS. And you're just, when you're going through it, you're like, okay, this sucks though. I don't care if it's for a higher purpose. Like
Yeah.
right now, this sucks. But yeah, now
Yeah.
with my hindsight, I can look back and yeah, my infertility saved my health because if I would have just kept going down the path I was going, I would have
Hmm.
definitely got some kind of full blown autoimmune issue, whether it was a thyroid or something else. And
Hmm.
if I would have maybe discovered my immune issue and just use the immune suppressing drugs without doing all the hard mental work, I think I always say this, I think I would have been a really rubbish mom. I think I would have just been really high strung and
Hmm.
just my old self. When you tap on kids to any situation, it just yeah, it just kind of brings out sometimes the just the stress of it all. So
Yeah.
yeah, my journey definitely brought me to a better place for sure.
Yeah. And I think it's pretty amazing that you now know what people are going through inside and out. You really have been there, and you've gone through it, and there's an element of trust and understanding that's deeper, knowing that you've actually walked the path and have gotten yourself. And I think it's great that you've figured it out. And I think a lot of it has to do with like intuition and just kind of persistence and not giving up to try to get down to the bottom of this.
Yeah, exactly. I felt really grateful that I had unexplained infertility because I think sometimes when you get diagnosed with something, you have that, you get put in that, group of society. And right now, a lot of people are saying, well,
Yeah.
there's nothing you can do about that. You have polycystic ovaries, you have endometriosis, you just have to deal with it, or you have low ovarian reserve. That's just the card you've been handed, where this the science is coming out. And I don't think I am a very scientific person. I'm not like book smart. Like I got my way through school from like being artistic and creative. And um, I feel
Hmm. We're the same.
Yeah, like if I can understand this science, then anyone can understand the science, and it is really black and white. You are born
Mhm.
with a certain set of genes, but you can make those genes clean or you can make those genes dirty, and it's really up to you, and you have the power to do that. And now I'm not saying that you can reverse all genetic issues. Obviously, that is not the case, but a lot of the autoimmune issues that women with infertility are dealing with, they have way more control than they realize to help better their
Yeah,
situation.
definitely. And actually, just to go to the point of even PCOS and low ovarian reserve have been changed through diet and supplements and lifestyle. So it is amazing how the body is so
Yes.
forgiving because the body wants to heal. It's programmed to heal. It's programmed to go into homeostasis. It's just that when we overload and tax the body, and most of the time we don't know, it's just the food that's accessible to us. It's not realizing the difference,
Mm-hmm.
and just going with the flow actually is not the best thing.
Right?
It's good to be proactive. You actually have to go against the grain to make sure that your products don't have toxins and your food is nourishing for your body and it's healthy and it doesn't have pesticides. And but once you get through that and learn that, then it becomes like second nature.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that for me it was so frustrating, and I would imagine this is for a lot of women, is I wasn't doing anything different than everyone else in my like circle, my friends, my family who were getting pregnant naturally. I wasn't drinking way more than anyone else. I wasn't eating McDonald's every day. I wasn't doing all these, like, I wasn't on drugs. I was just living
Yeah.
a normal
Yeah.
life. And in hindsight,
Right.
like, I was sick, even though I wasn't like in the hospital or I wasn't diagnosed with something. Like, I had IBS, I had, signs of an ulcer, I had, the fatigue, the dry skin, all these little symptoms that were
Yeah.
my body's signs of like, okay, you're getting unhealthy, and then infertility was my full blown, like, you are really unhealthy, that we are not going to allow you to create a baby. That's just the fact.
Yeah, and what's interesting is too is that when you really think about it, the body doesn't really spend a lot of energy and time on fertility. It wants to just make sure that the body's able to adjust and adapt and have the energy to get through any kind of healing or a condition that it has. So it puts reproduction on the back
Yes.
burner if other things are not balanced.
Yeah, and that's not the case for everyone. That for I would say for us who are dealing with infertility, that's how our genetics have played out. There are people who are
Hmm.
really sick or who are do drugs and get pregnant. It's just their genes just haven't performed that way, and we just need to get that into our
Right.
mindset, is find what you're infertile, right? That's why you're here. That's why you're listening to us. Okay, you are not going to be that girl who just gets drunk and gets pregnant. So let's take a step back and figure out why you're infertile and really get down to the root cause of it.
Yeah, and one thing too is in Chinese medicine we always perceive it like some people are born with a lot more essence and they just have more robust
Yep.
genetics and some people don't. And so, even somebody with robust genetics, if they've lived a really really crappy lifestyle, it will eventually get to it. But if they're really really robust and still have a crappy lifestyle, they may still have, because it's so robust, they may still have more reserves and it doesn't get to that, which is what you had just mentioned. Somebody who gets drunk and whatever, they may have more robust reserves to
Yeah.
begin with. And we look at it, pre-heaven energy and post-heaven energy. Post-heaven is the lifestyle you choose. But even so, I think that people who do have robust and their bodies are a lot more forgiving, they'll sometimes do things that are not as healthy, get pregnant, but the embryo doesn't doesn't have the best chance either. So it's super important to at least be conscious of it. And sometimes if it is fertility challenges as the alarm, it makes us more conscious to do the right things and to create a better soil for setting up the pregnancy, because that's a whole other thing. People could get pregnant and then they have genetic issues for the child
Yeah.
based on their lifestyle.
Yeah. I mean, that's what kind of made me really dig deep and stick to a pretty strict diet when I learned about epigenetics. And it's all about the genes switching on and off. And even though you may be able to get pregnant and let's say you don't have the healthiest genes, or we're seeing a lot of people doing IVF and kind of skipping that process here of doing the body healing. And yeah,
Hmm.
you're not cleaning up your genes, and therefore you could possibly be making your children's genes dirty. And that's what we're seeing through the generations now. The millennials are the
Yeah.
canary in the coal mine. They are going to be a very already kind of like um, a sick generation earlier than the previous generations before. And unfortunately, I think we're going to see infertility increase until we kind of all wake up to the fact that um, using drugs and IVF and all these products, if you don't truly need them, um, it might be getting you pregnant quicker, might be, you becoming a mother quicker, but what are the impacts on our children?
Yes, and our grandchildren, as a matter of fact, because it doesn't just impact your child, it actually impacts your
Yeah.
grandchild. Because if your child, especially if it's a girl, she will have all her
Yep.
follicles, for the
Yeah.
grandchild.
It's just crazy, like to think of it that way.
Is-
And it's a scientific fact, and that's just what it is. And it's it's hard to necessarily prove, because we're still playing with a life force, whatever you think that life force is. You don't have full control over your genetics. You don't have, you there's still that element of mystery, isn't there? So it's hard to say,
Yes,
because you can put 50 people through this same study and they all react differently to it. So but yeah,
exactly.
I'm hopeful that there are going to be some really big breakthroughs in the next 10 years, and then hopefully society will catch up.
Yes, definitely. And like you said, epigenetics. So even if there are issues with genetics, I always go back to this statement, the body is designed to be forgiving. And even in Chinese medicine, this is over 3,000 years ago, they break it down to two things, pre-heaven energy and post-heaven energy. So even if your pre-heaven energy is not great, and it could have been because of your parents' habits or whatever it was, you have this ability, just like you did yourself in your story, to change that
Yes.
and to turn it around. And that's, you know, I'm sorry if you're hearing background thunder, but it is lightning. We're in Miami here. So I just want to mention that. But who knows? Maybe the universe is hearing me, or it's angry, or who knows. but um, but we do, I just find that to be so empowering of a notion that you can actually take that take charge of that, and you've changed things and turned things around in your own life because of this condition and what you've had to go
Yeah,
through.
and unfortunately, I think for
Yeah.
many of us, I always kind of joke around that if I went back to myself at the very beginning of my journey and said, "Look, you're going to go through a lot of shit if you don't change up things," I don't think I would have listened to myself. Everyone kind of has to get there
Hmm.
in their own time. And I guess for me, I just
Yeah.
became desperate, and I was willing to do anything and everything. Um, and I did. I mean, I did some like really crazy shit on top of like diet and lifestyle. Um, And it
Mhm.
it really kind of became like, I mean, obviously the desire to become a mom was there, but it was also to figure it out. I just never believed that it was one of those things and that just happens to women. I just like that was kind of like the doctor's thing, and I was like, that's bullshit. Like we were created to um,
Mhm.
procreate, so why can't I?
Yeah.
Um,
Right. And I love that because that was your
hmm,
intuition. And that was your own innate intelligence, and you knew BS when you heard it. You acted on it, and that's where I feel, that's where the power lies, is really listening to yourself and listening to what doesn't sound right to you and questioning that. And I think everybody should
yeah,
do
and
that.
it's such a hard thing to do. I mean, I've talked to a lot of women who are like, I knew something was up kind of right when we started trying to conceive, but the doctor was like, no, I don't believe that, or I don't believe this, or don't worry, just relax. And it's crazy. And I even
Yeah.
did it through my own journey several times. And even when I went to, when my son was due, I wasn't going into labor, and the doctors convinced me to get induced because IVF babies have a higher risk of, A, B, and C. And I listened, even though I knew in my body that
Mhm.
wasn't the case for me. I got scared and put in, like, deer in the
Mhm.
headlights. And it's so
Yeah.
hard to really just stand up for yourself and find that inner strength of like, no, I know what I'm talking about here. I've done my research. I know my body.
Mhm.
So yeah, that would be one thing for any woman out there, or even man. If a doctor is saying no, that's not the case, like stand up and challenge them. And you know what? Even if you're wrong, at least at the end of the day, you can walk away and go, I did everything I possibly could.
Right. Like you took charge, you investigated, and I think that just people hearing your story and people hearing similar stories will give them the courage to really listen to themselves. And I know it sounds crazy, we need courage to listen to ourselves, but sometimes we do when we're faced with authority
Yeah.
figures that are telling us, no, this isn't the case, or it is the case. But the bottom line is, it really comes down to this: nobody, I don't care how much education you've had, nobody knows
Yeah.
everything. That's number one. Number two is, nobody knows what you're feeling inside your body. Nobody knows that. And we are designed to know what's good for us, and what doesn't feel right. And it's just like when we're eating bad food, we feel sick. Our bodies will always give us messages that we're getting off the
Hmm.
path.
As long as you listen.
Exactly. But it will give messages. You can ignore those messages, but it will. So that's yeah, so that's great. I think it's a really important topic because it's something that happens every single day.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think it kind of comes back to your own insecurities as well, with the like outside of the infertility. I felt like during my journey, I kind of realized how insecure I was in different ways. Even though if you knew me or met me, you'd be like, "You're not insecure," where in reality, I really was. And so I think because I didn't have like enough self love or enough self confidence to stand up to someone who
Mhm.
went to med school, and we think they
Mhm.
do know about this stuff. I really realized that was a big issue, and that I had to really work on that, of being like, okay, yeah, you're not going to know everything, and you're not the wisest person in the world, but you do have enough smarts to figure your own stuff out. And
Mhm.
I think that's why it took so long as well. But
Of course, but it doesn't matter how long, it just matters that you got there.
yeah, exactly. I know. Yeah, yeah. But sometimes I always think, I'm like, I would have been ready at like year 6, maybe
Mhm.
not 9.
But then you wouldn't have the exact children that you have today.
I
It's just that's when you're like, "Okay, I would never trade this for the world."
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, as much as long or as life keeps going on, you then look back and go, ah, that's why that had to happen. Even though when you're in a good space and you think, oh man, this is the worst timing in the world. And then you look
Mm-hmm.
back and you go, nope, that would have never happened if I wasn't under that pressure, or if we were in that certain, situation, I maybe would have taken the easy way out or not done this. So it does. Everything does happen for a reason if you allow it um, to be and show you the way.
Absolutely. So, with everything that you've gone through, what are the main key points that have inspired your own program for women? Like, what elements have you used from your own personal lessons to help other women?
So I created a journal called Baby and Me, which is a mindfulness journal, and you use it every night, and you basically look on the bright side of life every night in a certain way. There's different questions throughout the year. And it just helps you to kind of retrain your brain and realize that even though times are bad right now, there is good in your life. Because I think sometimes during infertility, we wish, we're in that constant 2 week wait, right? Like 2 weeks to ovulation and 2 weeks to period, your
Mm-hmm.
test, and you're just wishing kind of the time away, where this just gives you time to step back and reflect on all the small amazing moments that are happening. And it also has space to like do
Mm-hmm.
all the tracking and note taking through any journey. So whether you're doing it naturally using medical assistance, adopting, fostering, not trying to conceive, and even into your pregnancy and your postpartum. So it's 3 years, and I know a lot of people are like, 3 years, I don't want to be on like infertility journey for 3 years, but I really designed it that you can use it at any stage of your life. And that was
Mm-hmm.
key. When I look back at my journey, what was the one thing that got me mentally through my first miscarriage was I was doing very simple gratitude journaling every day. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that just accumulated over time, because I look back and I'm like, wow, I was such a different person. And like, that was what was it that made me shift? And it was the
Right.
every day constantly just retraining my brain to go, okay, what do you have around you that's amazing right now? And that didn't make me not sad about things or forget that I had infertility, but it definitely brought
Mm-hmm.
a different level of consciousness to my journey and into my life now. So that's one
Yeah.
thing. I definitely think that people should find a practice that they just focus or hone in on the amazingness that that there is amazingness in their life around them right now, even though it might not seem like it. And my other
Mm-hmm.
thing is finding the right diet and eliminating all of your inflammation. So whatever your stressors are, and you have to sometimes dig really deep for that. But that's for me. I truly believe if I didn't do the mindfulness stuff, even though I think the mindfulness stuff helped me continue on doing the diet, because there's time that it's so frustrating. Like I was the weirdo walking in with my own food or not eating because I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't have it. And I was, yeah, so like I had to have that, for me, the mindfulness to help me through, to be like, okay, it doesn't matter what these people think, they're not in my situation, I have a goal,
Right.
I'm going to achieve it. But I think that if I
Yeah.
would have just got rid of just if I only did one thing, and that was eliminate my stressors through diet and through like body products and the toxins in your home and things like that, I would have got pregnant. But yeah, so those two things, I would that's what I bring into my program. And they're really hard, and it's not an easy journey to do this. And I know a lot of people come to me and we have a conversation about what needs to be done, and they get really overwhelmed by it. And I really try to just break it down to really simple steps. And it's hard to do those simple steps because you want to be pregnant yesterday, you know?
Right.
And,
Of
um,
course.
but
Yeah.
it's really slowing down, taking a step back, and re-evaluating a lot of things in your life. Does everyone have to do this going through infertility? You know, I think there's a lot of different levels. Um, but, um, but yeah, like we said before in our conversation, I switched my view after, I think I learned about epigenetics after my first miscarriage. So I knew I can get pregnant then. So that was no longer my goal. I kind of felt like I got that. It was like my goal now is to switch off any crappy genes that I have going inside of me
Mhm.
and give my
Yeah.
future children a better chance of not having to face the issues that I faced, and cancers and things like that. And now I have two boys. My husband's side, has a history of male cancer, and my boys are born with that. That is their genetic code.
Mhm.
And now it's just my job to make sure that I'm doing everything to help them, maybe not develop it as early, or maybe not get it at all, but I know that it's in them. I know that that's their genes. So I feel very grateful for that, because if me and my husband would have just been able to get pregnant right off the bat, I think we would be dealing with a lot more harder issues later in
Yeah.
life.
Absolutely. Is that, I mean, if it's just for that knowledge and that education that you now have so that you're able to raise them in the way that empowers their own life, I mean, that's absolutely worth it. It is crazy, to know that you have that information, whereas a lot of people don't even know about epigenetics. And for people who don't know what we're talking about, because people might be like, what's epigenetics? It's when our genes, we could be born with certain genes, and if we eat a certain way or we do certain things, or I think even think certain
Yeah.
ways, we can turn it on and off, so that if there is a tendency to get some kind of disease, you have some antioxidants and eat really healthy, you can actually turn those off. Now, eat really healthy, what does that mean? Every person's different. You found a diet that specifically works with your condition. And that's why fad diets don't
Yeah.
work, because everybody's body is so different. It responds so differently to every food. And so to know that you're much more knowledgeable about that now is so much more empowering for your children.
Yeah.
And so that's always where the gift
Yeah,
is.
it's that preventive care, which is the hardest type of care, right? Because you're not actually seeing any, well, I mean, you are seeing a result because you're healthier, but I don't know why
Mhm.
in our brains we can like fight harder, like if we have cancer or if we have infertility, right? Like, oh, now I'm gonna do
Mhm.
everything and anything I possibly can to fight this. Where, if you got a test and said, okay, you're gonna get cancer if you don't eat this way, then maybe you would do a little bit more. But because we don't know, we can't predict the outcome. We're kind of like, well, we'll just take our chances. I'll see how I'll go. And it's really hard.
Yeah. Well, it's very human
Yeah.
nature to opt for convenience
And I still find it hard.
until we get a kick in the
Yeah,
butt.
I do.
Yeah.
I always am really honest. I do eat vegetables for breakfast. I am pretty much 80% on autoimmune paleo. But the other day I went to Whole Foods and I had a pesto pizza. Like there are times that I still eat things that I know aren't great for my body, but I'm
Mhm.
doing as limited of damage as I possibly can.
But it was from
Right,
Whole Foods.
right. Well, they probably have no Oreo in it, but we won't go there. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's about knowing where your line is, and I feel sometimes like you have to go that crazy neurotic person to find out how good you can feel and what your limit is, and then I feel like after you achieved your goal, you can kind of slip back into some of the convenience of the world we live in. And, you know, you're not going to be able to control everything. You know, you're still going to have all these air pollutions and, you know, you have to just
Right.
live life. But once you have that knowledge, like you said to me before, it's like you're in the matrix and what pill do you want to take? Because it is very
Right.
much like that. Once you have that knowledge, I feel you presently
Hmm.
can't go back because I do look at most of my situations and go, is it worth it? Is it worth gonna not feeling great tomorrow? Am I gonna be fuzzy?
Right.
Or like, oh, forget it, I don't have much on tomorrow, I'll just do it, you know? Yeah, you are very conscious of um, so much more, and I think it's a great thing, but it is a burden, you know. It is a burden to have on you, and it's a really hard to raise kids in a society, you know, who you know, they
Yeah.
kind of look at you like, what, you don't give your kid sandwiches? Which I do.
Right. You don't let your kid hold the cell phone to his ear. There's certain things I'm like, I can't, I even tell other kids, I'm like, when I see kids doing that, there's certain things that people just don't even have a clue about. And when I see kids putting their phones to the ear, sometimes I cross boundaries. I'm like, you shouldn't do that. You should move it away a little bit. It's not really good for you.
Yeah, I mean, and that's like a whole nother podcast, but yeah, for anyone out there that is feeling overwhelmed or, you know, any kind of like negative way towards diet and lifestyle changes, I would just say just give it a go. You have nothing else to lose, you know, just
Yeah.
slowly start like researching like what things you can make easy changes in and do it, and just and know that, you know, not everyone who changes their diet and lifestyle, you know, a lot of people will still need drugs to help them get pregnant, you know, IVF or IUI or, but know that the small things that you're doing are having a huge impact on not only your outcome, but your child as well. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And I see it as being an advocate for yourself, for your health, for your well-being, and not just yourself, but your
yeah.
child.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, that's what it's about, right? And you know what? I had someone tell
Yeah.
me once, before before I got pregnant with my son, um, they said, "Well, wouldn't you want to have a child anyways, no matter how healthy they were? At least you had a child." And yeah, and I
Really?
just remember like trying my best not to be really rude about it and just being,
Yeah, the things that come out of people's mouths amaze me
"Oh,
sometimes.
no, no." I mean, obviously, if I had a child who had issues, I would love them no matter what. Um,
Right.
but no, I am fighting for the best like possibility for my children now, because that's when I knew about epigenetics.
Yeah.
I was like, no, 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 that's not okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, we'll get there.
absolutely. So this was an amazing talk. Of course, I know that we both spoke pre this episode, just on our pre-talk, that we're both kind of rushing because we have other podcasts coming up. But I would actually keep talking about this for hours because I think both of us are very passionate in our own perspectives about fertility and empowerment as well, which is what I love about how you approach it. And also the fact that knowing that you have a hand in your ability to thrive and for the ability of your child to thrive, and a lot of this information is very empowering. And if people would like to find you, how can they find you?
So my website is www.my mindfulme.com, and all the links to everything else that I'm doing. So the journal, the podcast, and what else am I doing? The blog, my links to my Instagram account, which is where you'll see me on there. I'm kind of like taking some step back and just with the podcast, trying to just get more engagement on there. But yeah, just go to the website and explore. There's lots of resources. There's links to my Amazon shop, which has all my like top favorite books and products. So yeah, I'm just all on the website there, and I have a new program coming out in January, which I'm super excited about. And it's basically kind of what we talked about. It's just really breaking down all the steps that you could possibly take to improve your fertility. And it's all about empowerment and figuring out what you want to do and what you probably should do. So, yeah.
Right, right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Monica. I really enjoyed having you on here, and I'm excited to start listening to your podcast.
Thank you very much. And your podcast is doing amazing things. So I'm really hoping that there's a big handful of us in the community that are bringing up these subjects and talking about new things, and hopefully just making a really big difference in the infertility community. So yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
So that concludes today's episode. You can find all the links mentioned on the episode notes. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to leave a review. Reviews are everything to podcasters. You can find me on my website at www.thewholesomelotus.com. And please be on the lookout for my online course and program. This course has emerged from everything that I've been using for the fertility program I now offer at my office. I wanted to consolidate all of my suggestions and coaching and put it into a form that anyone can purchase and use. It was important for me to encompass key fertility health factors as well as guide you in implementing changes in your routine that are shown to boost fertility while being realistic and user-friendly. I will be offering this course with and without coaching. If you're interested and want updates as well as a free ebook on my top 10 fertility boosting habits, you can visit my fertility page on www.thewholesomelotus.com, where you can find the subscription form. I thank you so much for listening in and hope you have a beautiful day.